The ceiling of the church basement hunched low, the pillars like cold knuckles dotted with peeling paint. There was a strange hush, the kind you get when something has just soured in a room, when the joke tips over from harmless fun to something sharp. I stood near the folding table where I'd set out my photographs, heart thudding like the old radiator in the corner. Staring at the battered linoleum, I could still feel everyone's eyes heavy on my neck. It was the St. Martha's annual talent and service night, the one time a year the whole Filipino community of our East Vancouver neighborhood squeezed into the musty hall. Old men from St. John's shuffled dominoes by the wall, teeters gossiped in bursts of Tagalog, and kids darted around their legs shrieking with untamed energy. I'd taken this chance to show my framed prints, portraits of bus drivers, shopkeepers, and grandmothers with their groceries. Smoky late-day skies over rainy Hastings Street, the MC, Mr. Aquino, gave my name a strange lilting emphasis as I stood. And now, let us see the photography of Catherine Ramos. There was polite clapping. It was always polite, even if you could sense how little they expected. When I returned to my corner, I overheard the sideways glances. Lita Teresa's voice sliced through. Pictures, not even real work. My cousin's son does weddings, good living, but that's just a side job. From beside her, someone else snorted. She takes photos of bus stops. Why? To waste money on film. She needs a proper plan, not fairy tales. I tried to smile as people walked past my display. Some stopped, squinting at the weathered hands in black and white, at the rain-drizzled neon. They asked polite questions, careful not to linger too long. My mother tried to help, ushering her church friends over, but she couldn't disguise her embarrassment. When she smiled at me, I could see worry stitched across her face, as if she were waiting for me to come back to my senses. Afterwards, they made me stand for a group encouragement at the mic. I remember gripping the metal, my palms sweating, as three aunties told me I had a good eye, but advised me to get an education degree just in case. Laughter rustled from the side where the older boys huddled. For jokes, Miguel mimed holding a gigantic camera and pretended to take pictures of the punch bowl. Afterward, outside, I slipped away from the crowd, my camera case bumping against my leg. The city was dark outside the church, damp, the cold wind carrying the smell of fried onions from the Chinese restaurant next door. I kept my head down all the way home. Later that night in my tiny bedroom, I stared at my prints, wondering if they were right. Maybe it was ridiculous, maybe I was dragging all of us somewhere foolish, but something fierce inside me wouldn't let go. I lay awake and listened to the clock ticking, grief clinging to me like a second skin. There was clarity, too, a hard, bright edge beneath the ache. I saw, for just a moment, the older women I'd photographed, the gentle strength underneath their tired eyes. They hadn't needed anyone's permission to live their own stories. Why should I? My mother and I lived in a narrow walk-up on Commercial Drive, a converted attic with the ceiling slanting over the window. She worked long hours cleaning offices downtown. I worked after school at a bakery, saving every extra dollar for film or later used memory cards for my camera. Every month I'd check the city library bulletin board for photography contests and calls for entry. Most of my rejection letters I tore up before my mom could see them. Rumors spread in our community. I heard them at potlucks where the Titos asked if I'd found a nice boy yet or if I had applied to teach at Queen Mary School. I lied sometimes just to keep their voices away from my mother's ears, but I kept submitting photos. I kept walking the rainy streets, saw something new each time. The way light ran gold liquor across wet asphalt, the soft collapse of an old man's hands as he waited for the number 4 bus. I graduated high school with little ceremony. At the last moment, I declined all offers for nursing or teaching courses, anything sensible. Instead, I worked full-time, sometimes double shifts, using my breaks to edit photos on an ancient laptop. My mother and I fought about it late at night, her worries fracturing between Tagalog and English. She tried bargaining, just get the diploma anak, then you can do your picture taking. I tried explaining how it felt when I was behind the camera, but words failed me. One night when the shouting had died and she'd retreated to bed, I sat on the floor and cried for the first time in years. I wanted to give up. The world felt hard-edged, brittle. I was tired of the coldness at community events, of the boys' jokes or the relatives who wouldn't meet my gaze. But the camera waited on the window ledge. It was my secret, my way of seeing the city I lived in, even when it barely seemed to notice. Opportunities moved slowly. Some nights I worked for free at a small news blog, shooting stories nobody else wanted. I documented alleyways and food stalls at midnight, the new wave of immigrants in shadowed corners. On weekends, when I could, I rode my bike through East Van, snapping what felt like tiny, essential truths: the exhaustion in the face of a single mother, the sly dignity of a street vendor. Nothing I made won prizes, but I kept submitting, learning with each batch of rejections. The world measured progress in paychecks and diplomas, but my victories were private. The first time a stranger reached out to say a photo moved them, I saved their email. The first time a magazine offered me $100 for a cityscape, I held the check in my hand for an hour before cashing it. My career was a slow, stuttering crawl, but I wouldn't stop. A few years later, I moved to a basement suite near Mount Pleasant. I had more space then, but still barely enough to pay rent. I took odd jobs: weddings, product shots for neighborhood stores, events for charities. Street work called to me, though. I watched and listened, always looking for the moment when the mask slips and someone's deep self glimmers through. The rain of Vancouver became my constant companion, its silver sheet covering everything in mystery. 7 years after my public shaming, while sorting through emails after another all-nighter editing, I saw the message from the Vancouver Art Gallery. One of their curators had found my series, After the Rain, online. They wanted to include it in a major group exhibition, Immigrant Voices, New Visions of Vancouver. I read the email so many times the screen blurred. Then I called my mother. She answered in the quiet voice she used when she was worried. "Ma," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "the art gallery wants to show my photos." The downtown one. She was silent for a moment, as if waiting for the joke to end. "Will people pay money to see them?" she finally asked, searching for something to ground the news. I laughed, surprised by my own joy. "Yes, Ma. They will." From there, everything rushed forward. I signed contracts, fretted about pricing and print quality, met with gallery staff in rooms crowded with color charts and quiet, thoughtful people. There were interviews, articles, a sudden surge of attention. In the exhibition's first month, I felt dizzy, frightened, even. I spent hours sitting quietly in the gallery, unsure how to react to strangers saying my name, to the way they lingered respectfully before photos of streets I'd once felt invisible in. The Filipino community noticed, too. My mother called, breathless, when Father Lito sent a mass text about our very own Catherine in the city paper. Facebook posts sprouted up, the same relatives who once shook their heads now brandishing their connections. "I knew her when she's my cousin's friend's daughter." Some even began messaging me. "So proud of you, bet you remember us at St. Martha's." 4 months after the exhibition opened, I was invited to donate a print for a charity auction, benefiting St. Martha's Food Bank. Against my better judgment, I agreed. "It means a lot to the church," the organizer insisted, "and people would love to see what you've become." The night of the fundraiser, the same basement room as before was crowded, the floors sticky from old spills, walls decorated with faded banners. But this time it was my work framed on an easel by the stage. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt the old tension buzzing in my chest. The same old faces, the aunties at the food tables, the old men playing cards, the cluster of boys now grown into men, all waiting. Laughter echoed in the same patterns. Some people smiled at me, others measured the distance, unsure. My mother, radiant now, held my arm. "Anak," she whispered, "this is your moment, they cannot laugh." Her grip was both proud and trembling. Minutes drifted by. I sipped watered-down punch, nodding at the teeters as they peered at my framed print, a portrait of an older woman, eyes shining under a streetlight after a long shift. There were scraps of conversation, a flicker of excitement, but I could also hear the faint trace of skepticism. "It's just a photo, right? How much could people pay for a picture?" After a while, the MC called for everyone's attention. The room quieted, a few giggles from the back. The organizer announced the auction. "We are proud to have an original signed print from internationally exhibited photographer Catherine Ramos, our own." I stood at the edge of the room, pretending not to notice, every eye on me. The bidding started low. For a moment I worried it would die there, that my confidence would collapse in public. But a stylish woman in a red scarf, a city councillor I later learned, raised the bid. Another person, a local art collector, joined in. The numbers climbed past the price of any fundraiser meal ever auctioned in this small hall. The room shifted. I felt it at first in the slow hush, then in the ripple as the price doubled, then tripled the starting offer. The men at the domino table stared. Lita Teresa, once my loudest critic, moved closer, mouth ajar. When the print finally sold, close to $2,000, a wave of applause broke out, much louder than the polite clapping years ago. Afterward, people came up one by one, congratulating me, wanting selfies with me and the photo, asking for business cards. Some apologized awkwardly for not seeing it before. Later, Teresa pressed my hand in hers, her words soft. "So much talent, Kat. I knew you'd go far. You always had a special sight." The boys from the old group circled around, all sheepish grins and mock bows. "We just play basketball now," Miguel admitted, "but if we had your kind of patience, maybe we'd be artists too." I held my mother's hand as people surrounded us with praise. She beamed, introducing me with such pride my face went hot, my chest ached, grief dissolving into something lighter. The memory of that original shaming seemed distant, its sharp corners softened by time and witnessing. My people, even the skeptics, saw something new now, someone who had left, struggled, and returned changed but unbroken. Eventually the night wore down. Cleaning up, I found myself alone again in the far corner beneath a flickering exit sign. I watched out the window where rain shimmered orange under the street lamps. The city felt the same, wide, humming, full of light and shadow. I had wandered a long way through it, searching for something I wasn't sure I'd ever find. In the faces of the community, I finally saw acceptance, not the grudging kind, but something gentler. They didn't just see my photographs now, they saw me, all the hardness and grace it took to return home. I would always feel some ache at what had come before. You can't erase the wound of rejection, it stays bone deep. But I could stand among them, camera in hand, knowing I had carved out my own place. I had made something beautiful from loneliness, and now, for the first time, I wasn't alone. The room was noisy with laughter, crowded with warmth, and I let it in, breathing deep, eyes wide open to the life I'd always tried to catch in a frame.